One of the big spoilers at your workplace, the camaraderie, the bonding, the relationships, the big spoiler is not setting the expectations right. And I'll tell you how that spoils the entire game, how that leads to the trouble, something which starts very small and then grows up massively, right? So if you're going through that trouble and you often hear statements like, hey, this was not expected from you, or you didn't do this, I had told you to do this, but this was not agreed. Oh, no, 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 this is not what I meant. What I meant was this. Things like these, other flavors of this, if that's what you hear from other people at your workplace, then understand that somewhere the communication has not been very clear. There's lack of clarity. There's lack of, expectation setting so that the other person is clear, you are clear, and maybe some agreements have not been made, right? So we're going to dive a little deeper into this. And I can tell you one thing, you will see a huge shift when you work on this. Yeah. So stay on right until the end. This is very important. Hi, I'm Astha Tatia, daughter of two rock-solid pillars, mother to a lovely daughter, wife of a humor king, an engineer, MBA corporate executive turned anchor person, now an author and a happiness coach, helping corporate leaders build their happiness muscle by creating meaningful relationships at their workplaces. If what you hear today makes sense, then go ahead and hit the like button. And if you've not already done, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Very recently, I had hired, this agency, or I'd say a freelancer, and he was to basically create a landing page for me. And the whole idea of us getting together was, I already had stuff happening for me, but the idea of us collaborating was that he's going to, help me increase the percentage conversion. If I'm at an 11%, it's going to be a 20% conversion. That's what we were talking about, conversion from landing page. And those of you who understand what I'm saying, right? So there was something that we agreed on, and we made an agreement, yeah, and we got together basis that, right? And to cut the long story short, uh, a few weeks into it, and the whole agreement was that I had to pay him a part of the amount in advance and then the other part later once we had achieved what we had agreed on, right? A few weeks into it, and we were just discussing, there was a lot of back and forth happening because of the product that was delivered, and there was this no improvement basically, and therefore we were questioning, and there came a point where he said, hey, you know what, I don't think I can give any more time to this project. I have a lot of other clients who I have to take care of. There's a project that I'm working on. I don't think I can devote more time. I already see there is an improvement, and I've done my bit. So now maybe it's your team who can take care of it and stuff like that. And the last bit that we had the conversation, it was a dampener. I somewhere felt cheated, and that's what I communicated to him, that what we had agreed on was this whole improvement, but that's not happened. You're saying there's an improvement, but that's not really. And he said, oh, okay, but then I've done my bit. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that despite that agreement, despite us having those communications, sometimes we overcome it, right? We do not foresee what the journey may look like, how much investment it may need in terms of time and effort. But we very quickly, just to have our way, or to create what we want to create, we overcome it, and we just get into it. And then there is when you start going through that process, there is a gap that you start to experience because you've overcommitted, because in that urge to get something, you did not anticipate, or maybe you could anticipate, but you thought, oh, it's going to be fine. And then that's what happens. So how many times does it happen with you, maybe with a client of yours? Or if I extend this parallel to your workplace relationships, How many times do you commit to somebody, maybe your boss, maybe your colleague, maybe your subordinate, that, hey, this is what we're going to do, or this is how it's going to work, or get into this, this is what it's going to lead, or together, this is what we are going to create. You want this to happen, you get people into it, only to realize that, oh, it's not turning out the way you want, or you had thought it would, and then you just lose out on it. The communication has not been complete, the expectation setting has not been complete. You never had that difficult conversation that, hey, this is how it's going to happen, this is how it's going to turn out, it's going to take time, my role is this, your role is this. And then people are clueless, and then they are left disappointed, they feel cheated, right? And that's where the whole gap starts to happen. Does this make sense? Does this ring a bell? Resonates, right? Doesn't make anybody right or wrong, but get this very clear. No matter how small the commitment is, and no matter how big a commitment has come your way, and the small and big could be whatever terms, right? You cannot not honor the smaller commitment, because that reflects on who you are. That reflects on the long-term, growth, long-term relationships that you're going to have, because people are watching you all the time. It's not about the organization currently. It's about who you are. So when you're backing off on your commitment in any way, right, or when you're not setting those expectations very clear, then there's this whole lot of confusion. So what is important is, whether it is any stakeholder at your workplace, if it's your boss, if it's your colleague, if it's your subordinate, if it's a teammate, if it's a client, right? Be very clear in your communication, and that requires you to have clarity about what are your deliverables, how this is going to go, and what is it that you really want within this, so that when you sit down to have an enrollment conversation, or when you sit down to have a discussion about what you're going to create together, then you can very well communicate. Then you set down very clear expectations in terms of the process. You set down very clear expectations in terms of how you're going to communicate. You set down expectations in terms of how often are you going to engage, what's going to be your role, what's going to be the other person's role. We run away from these conversations quite often, or we have no idea that these are non-negotiable. So how much of the confusion, how much of the pain and suffering that you're going through in your relationships is actually because of the lack of that clarity, the lack of clear expectation setting. Think about it. You may want to pick up your pen and paper right now, pause this and write down, right? And you will see, if you're going through that trouble, the pain, a lot of it is because you don't have the clarity. You've not had that. And if you have somebody, an authority figure, and they're not giving you the clarity, they're not setting the expectations right, well, you take charge. You walk up to them and you tell them, hey, I think I need clarity here. I would want, can we set the expectations right here? We're getting on this project. Can we understand how often are we going to meet to review the progress? How often are we what's going to be the system to monitor the progress? Can we set up some systems so that there's no confusion, so that you're not in for those surprises, right? But don't leave people feeling cheated, feeling duped, feeling, oh my God, what happened? You left me alone, right? So it's not about who's right or who's wrong. In the same case that I was talking about my experience, the only communication, I think what I told this gentleman was, my idea or agenda here is not to prove that you're wrong and I'm right, because either way, I've spent my time, energy, money, and I feel horrible. I don't like this whole thing, right? So even if I prove you wrong and you say I'm wrong, it doesn't serve me, right? I've had, but all I'm saying is, going forward, do not do this to anybody. Do not do this to anybody. You need your clarity, and you need to be very clear in your communication, right? So quite often we jump into things, we overcome it, then we don't even set the expectations. You are in for a disaster. Let me tell you very, very clearly. very clearly. Does it make sense? Right? What are you getting out of this? What are you getting? Let me know in the comments here. Write it down for yourself, right? Do not escape. Wherever you think you have a role to play and maybe you've missed out, write that down. Wherever you think the other person is missing out and you need clear expectation setting, walk up to them, seek clarity. Very important. Because if you don't do that, then that's the spoiler and you don't want that to happen. Yeah. So if it's already happening, starting to happen, great. You're at a great space. Take care of it right now. If you think it's at an advanced stage and you're in trouble, no worries. It's never too late to start. Yeah. So practice this. Very important. Set the expectations very clear. Do not leave space for ambiguity because it's not a game of emotions. It's not about, oh, you should have understood this. Hey, why did you do this to me? Hey, this was not expected from you. In the first place, the expectations were not there, right? So don't bother yourself. Don't create a mess for yourself and other people. You want a lovely space. You want a healthy working environment. You want great relationships. Get as much clarity, as much transparent communication as can be. And then just stand there rock solid. No matter what, no matter how small that commitment is, no matter how low the stakes are, stand up for that because that defines who you are as a leader. That's how people view you. Make sense? If it does, hit the like button. Let me know in the comments, what did you get from this? Like in your life, what are you really getting out of this? Write it down, take action. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because there's lots of content that we put out here which is going to be beneficial for you. Yeah, I'm going to see you in the next one. Until then, keep taking action. Bye-bye.